What if the story of Voldemort didn't end in the Great Hall, with the Elder Wand turning against its master and his body crumbling into nothing? What if, instead, something lingered, a thought, a fragment, a whisper of consciousness adrift, in the void so deep that even death seemed distant? Imagine a space without light or sound, where the boundaries between time and eternity blur like smoke over still water. It is here that the last remnant of Tom Riddle stirs, not yet gone, not yet forgiven. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey. Together, you find yourself floating, no existing, within a space that feels both infinite and claustrophobic. The concept of direction is meaningless here. There is no up or down, only thought. And in that thought, a whisper. I am still here. For the first time since his fall, the fragment of Voldemort's soul experiences something unfamiliar, awareness stripped of power. The Horcruxes are gone, the body destroyed, and the legacy crumbled into dust. But the echo remains. What does a soul do when there's nothing left to conquer? It remembers. Not willingly, of course. Voldemort has built his existence on avoidance, on locking memories in the vaults of denial, burying the fragile boy named Tom under titles like Dark Lord and He Who Must Not Be Named. Yet memory, like magic, refuses to die quietly. In this strange purgatory, thought itself becomes visible. Every emotion he ever suppressed materializes as shifting shapes in the darkness. Anger drips like molten iron, pride glows in jagged streaks, and fear, his oldest companion, pulses like a quiet heart in the void. You move closer to him, unseen but present, as though watching the last act of a play long forgotten. He stirs again. A faint hiss escapes what might once have been a mouth. I am not done. But even the void laughs. There is no sound, only the sensation of mockery, soft and endless. Scholars still debate whether a soul, once divided and corrupted by dark magic, can ever be made whole again. Some ancient grimoires from the time of Herpo the Foul, the first recorded creator of a Horcrux, suggest that each piece retains its own consciousness, twisted, incomplete, yearning. Others claim that upon the destruction of the final Horcrux, what remains of the original being dissolves into pure chaos, never to reform. Yet what if, by some cruel miracle, one piece endures, sentient enough to regret, too weak to harm? You drift through the nothingness beside him. A flicker appears, distant and trembling, like a candle in fog. It is not light in the mortal sense, it's memory. You see flashes of the boy from Wool's orphanage, pale, watchful, clutching a box beneath his bed filled with stolen trinkets. A yo-yo, a thimble, a seashell he once made another child cry to possess. His world was small, but his hunger enormous. He learned early that love was a thing people mentioned, but never gave. And so, he built his own religion. One where affection was replaced by fear, and power stood in for belonging. But here, stripped of all the grandeur of serpents and spells, that boy's loneliness returns. The fragment trembles. The darkness begins to echo with whispers, voices not of the living, but of memory itself. You hear them too, the screams of his victims, the incantations that once shook the walls of Hogwarts, the laughter of a boy who thought he could outsmart death. It all collides into a single, unbearable silence. For the first time in centuries, Voldemort feels pain. Not physical, but existential. The pain of recognition. He is forced to see the chasm between what he was and what he became. Somewhere, in that stillness, he remembers the night he split his soul for the first time. It was not glorious. It was cold, mechanical, drenched in fear. He had killed to prove a theory, but the moment the spell was complete, he felt something missing. That absence haunted him more than any curse could. But pride, as always, filled the void like poison poured into a wound. A faint shape appears before him, a reflection hazy and incomplete. It is not Harry, nor Dumbledore, nor any victim. It is himself, but not the serpent-faced creature that terrified the wizarding world. This figure is young, human, uncertain. A Dom Marvolo riddle at 16. The fragment reaches toward it instinctively, his incorporeal fingers trembling. "Who are you?" he asks, though he knows the answer. "The part you buried," the reflection replies softly. "The one that still remembers your mother's eyes." He recoils. There are no mirrors in death, but the afterlife has a cruel way of reflecting truth. The scene shifts again, fluid like smoke in wind. You now stand in the ruins of his memories, the chamber of secrets, the forbidden forest, the room of requirement, all places where ambition outgrew humanity. The reflection follows him through each, whispering, "You could have stopped. You always could have stopped." Yet even here, Voldemort resists. Redemption to him feels like mockery, a trick played by lesser minds who mistake weakness for virtue. Still, the void does not let go. It hums with unseen magic, old as the world itself. You recognize it from ancient wizarding texts, Eterna Legio, the eternal law of balance. Every act of dark magic leaves an imprint, and every soul, no matter how corrupted, must face the echo of its own deeds. Some wizards called it the weight, others the reckoning. It is said that even Gellert Grindelwald saw it in his final moments, a silent awareness that power cannot shield one from consequence. And now Voldemort meets the same fate. Images flood him. Harry lowering his wand, refusing to kill. Narcissa lying to save her son. Snape weeping over Lily's memory. Each act of mercy, each flicker of compassion stands before him like light-piercing fog. He cannot understand it. To him, love was a word like weakness or foolishness, a soft thing that breaks easily. Yet here, in the absence of everything else, love becomes the only thing that endures. You sense the shift inside him. It is small, almost imperceptible, but it's there. The first trace of doubt, not about his philosophy or power, but about his own certainty. Could it be that all his life he had mistaken fear for strength? Could immortality achieved through division ever match the peace that comes from being whole? He doesn't know, but for the first time, he wants to know. In the farthest reaches of the void, the faint glow brightens. It pulses with rhythm like a heartbeat. The fragment drifts toward it, compelled by something ancient and wordless. Around him, the shadows begin to twist, not menacingly, but in slow, graceful patterns like ink dispersing in water. This light does not promise salvation. It promises truth, and truth, as he is beginning to learn, is far more terrifying than death. He pauses at the edge of the glow, watching the mist swirl into the shape of a door, or perhaps a mirror. There are inscriptions etched along its frame, letters that shift between languages. You catch fragments. In understanding, there is release. The phrase feels older than Hogwarts, older than the Ministry, perhaps as old as magic itself. Voldemort hesitates. Behind him stretches endless darkness. Before him, something unknown. And for the first time, he cannot predict what will happen next. He steps forward. The light swallows him whole. For a heartbeat, there is nothing. Only the sound of memory breathing. Then, a landscape begins to form. rolling grey fields under a sky without stars. It looks like Britain, but faded, drained of life. This is not heaven nor hell, it is the in-between. Souls that never found peace wander here, whispering fragments of their stories. You can almost hear them murmur, "We are what we remember." Voldemort looks down at his hands. They are no longer monstrous, but they tremble like those of an old man. He feels weight, the weight of mortality, of consequence. It is unbearable and yet oddly comforting, as though his soul finally recognizes gravity. Somewhere in the distance he senses movement, a presence approaching. It is faint but familiar. The voice that once belonged to Dumbledore drifts through the mist. "You see, Tom, even now there is always a choice." Voldemort turns, but the figure fades. He wants to reply, to defend himself, to argue that redemption is for fools, but no words come. Only the echo of a memory, a boy in a dormitory window staring out at the moon, whispering, "I just want to be special." The light dims. The void grows silent once more. But the seed of something unthinkable has been planted, a question that has no spell, no incantation, no answer. Can a soul this broken be mended, or does awareness only deepen the wound? You don't know, neither does he. But somewhere deep, within that fractured essence, for the first time in eternity, Tom Riddle whispers a word he has never spoken before. "Please." And in that single word, the void trembles. Because even the darkest soul, it seems, still remembers how to ask for mercy. You awaken within a place that feels both impossible and familiar, neither heaven nor hell, but a realm built from memory itself. The landscape ripples like a mirage, shifting between marble corridors and endless grey plains. In the distance stands something that seems alive and ancient, a mirror taller than a tower, its surface swirling like liquid silver. The air hums with quiet electricity, a kind of sentient stillness that knows your name. Tom Riddle, the boy who once called himself Lord Voldemort, steps closer. He doesn't yet realize that this is not a mirror of glass, but of consequence. It does not show faces. It shows truth. You watch him from a quiet corner of the in-between. The mirror pulses softly, as though breathing in the memories of the dead. And then reflections appear. Not faces, but fragments. A hand reaching out, a child crying, a wand raised in fear. Each image flickers with spectral light before fading into smoke. Voldemort tilts his head, frowning. "A trick," he murmurs, his voice sharper than the void itself. But the mirror responds, whispering back not with words but with moments. The first image solidifies. Lily Potter standing in front of her child. Her eyes, those same green eyes that haunted him through every defeat, are calm, steady, and utterly fearless. She does not accuse. She simply exists, radiant and real. Voldemort stares at her as though she were an illusion too fragile to touch. "You chose to die," he says flatly, "for a child who would never remember you." The mirror hums in reply. A second figure emerges, James Potter, hands on his wand, shouting something unheard before the spell struck. Voldemort's voice trembles just slightly. Foolish, but the mirror does not show their deaths. It shows what came after, the joy that surrounded their son, the quiet, enduring love that carried Harry forward. Voldemort looks away, his reflection breaking into ripples of shadow. In life, he had mocked love as a weakness, a sentiment for those too timid to wield power. Yet here, stripped of his grandeur, he sees how love outlived him. His reign of terror, his armies, his name, all gone. But the memory of Lily's sacrifice endures like a spell that even death cannot undo. You feel a tremor pass through the void. The mirror brightens. Now the reflection shows another figure, an old man with half-moon spectacles and a calm smile. Dumbledore. "Still playing games, Tom?" The voice echoes softly. Voldemort steps back, instinctively defensive. "I have no master here," he spits. "You never did," the echo replies. And that was your tragedy. For the briefest second, the air thickens with something like sorrow. You sense it, faint but real. Remorse, perhaps, or its distant cousin, recognition. Voldemort clenches his fists. You think this will break me? He shouts at the mirror. I have faced death. I conquered it. But even as he speaks, his reflection begins to fracture. It shows not triumph, but fear. Not power, but emptiness. The eyes staring back at him are hollow, endless, lost. Scholars still debate the true nature of the soul mirror. Some believe it is the final test, an artifact from the earliest days of magic, designed by the founders themselves to weigh a wizard's heart. Others claim it is no object at all, but a manifestation of conscience. In the secret libraries of Nurmengard, Grindelwald once wrote that the mirror reveals the unacknowledged truths of those who believed themselves gods. If that's true, then Tom Riddle is about to meet the only deity he's ever feared, his own reflection. The surface ripples again, and suddenly he is no longer alone. The ghosts of his victims drift into view, not like the transparent shades he once conjured from his wand, but living memories bound to the mirror's will. They do not scream, they do not curse. They only watch. Among them, a young boy with messy hair steps forward. Harry, not the hero he remembers, but a child again, clutching a broken toy broomstick. Voldemort feels something inside him twist violently. No, he whispers. Not you. You are gone. But the boy doesn't fade. He simply looks up and says nothing. A gust of invisible wind sweeps through the in-between, scattering the images into silver dust. Voldemort falls to his knees, not from pain, but from disorientation. The mirror's light fades until only his reflection remains, trembling, uncertain. He has never seen himself look afraid before. The void, silent for so long, begins to hum a slow melody, a sound like breath through hollow glass. And for the first time, he hears something beneath it, a heartbeat, not his, but humanity's, the sound of lives that went on without him. You drift closer, sensing the transformation in the air. The mirror begins to whisper again. Not words, but questions. Do you understand what you destroyed? It seems to ask. Do you see what might have been? Voldemort tries to speak, but his voice fractures into echoes. I wanted to live, he finally manages. The mirror brightens. And you killed for it, it replies, though no lips move. You divided what was meant to be whole. He touches the surface, and instantly the mirror shifts. Gone is the misty void. Now he stands inside his own memory. The scene, a dimly lit room, a ring gleaming on a table. He remembers it vividly. The day he transformed Marvel O'Gaunt's heirloom into his first Horcrux. The air smells of iron and candle wax. There's blood on his hands. The younger Tom Riddle stares back at him, proud, defiant, certain that he has conquered death. The older fragment watches with something approaching horror. What did you gain? The mirror whispers. What did you lose? He cannot answer, because in truth he knows. Every Horcrux he made hollowed him further. Each murder carved away something essential until there was nothing left to feel. In the end, even his triumphs had no taste. He remembers standing in front of his followers after returning from the dead, how he laughed, how they cheered, and how empty it had all felt. No warmth, no joy, only the performance of victory. The mirror shows it now, his army bowing, their faces glazed with fear, not devotion. A flicker of color cuts through the gray. Red. The reflection warps, and he sees a serpent slithering toward him. Nagini. She circles his feet, her eyes shining with something almost human. He kneels instinctively. You were the only one who understood, he whispers. But the snake hisses low and mournful. Her form dissolves into mist. Voldemort flinches as he realizes that even his companions were bound to his curse. In binding Nagini to his soul, he condemned her to his own damnation. The mirror shows her final moments, her body falling lifeless as Neville's blade cuts through the air. He turns away, trembling. The light around him flickers, pulsing like a heartbeat again. The mirror begins to dissolve, and in its place appears a door, identical to the one he saw before, but smaller, humbler, carved from dark oak. He hesitates. Is this forgiveness? He asks the silence. The air doesn't answer, but you feel the meaning pressing in from all sides. Not yet. First truth. He opens the door. Inside is darkness, but not empty darkness. This one feels alive. It hums with echoes of laughter, fear, and memory. He steps forward, and the scene transforms again. Now he's standing in the courtyard of Hogwarts. The sky glows with soft dawn light. Students are walking to class unaware of him. He sees them all, Gryffindors, Slytherins, Hufflepuffs, Ravenclaws, arguing, laughing, living. It's the life he might have had if he'd chosen differently. He watches a young boy practicing charms, a girl offering to help, the small kindnesses that built the world he tried to destroy. He reaches out, but they pass through him like mist. He's not part of this world anymore. Yet as he watches, something unexpected happens. Peace. Not full, not pure, but a flicker. The realization that even in his absence, life continues. Hogwarts stands. Magic survives. Love persists. The mirror reappears behind him, glowing faintly. It shows him standing among them, not as a tyrant, but as a teacher, perhaps even a protector. A glimpse of the life that could have been. He watches silently, unable to look away. So close, the mirror whispers. Always so close. He turns his back on it, trembling. I was never meant for redemption, he says softly. But the mirror only replies, you were meant to choose. And as the words echo into the fading light, the world begins to shift again. The mirror melts away, replaced by the faint outline of figures waiting in the mist, ghosts that refuse to disappear. Lily, Dumbledore, Nagini, all silent, all watching, waiting for him to face what comes next. The air grows still. The void hums softly. Voldemort, no, Tom, takes one slow breath. He doesn't yet know it, but the journey into memory has only begun. The mist thickens until you can taste it, cold, metallic, almost like the smell of rain before a storm. Tom Riddle stands in the middle of an unending plain, where light and shadow dance with equal weight. The mirror is gone now, but something else lingers. Whispers, faint at first, then sharper, more distinct. They are voices, familiar, fragmented, echoing from every direction at once. He turns slowly, expecting another illusion, but this time it's not reflection that greets him. It's memory given form, and memory does not lie. They step out of the fog one by one. Lily Potter first, her green eyes shining not with anger, but unbearable calm. Behind her comes James, shoulders straight, his wand lowered. Then Dumbledore, tall and serene, holding nothing but a faint smile that hides both sorrow and understanding. A fourth figure slithers from the darkness, her gaze predatory yet mournful. Nagini. And last, quieter than the rest, a small, pale child holding a diary. Tom freezes. The child is him. The version he buried long ago, before he learned to hide pain beneath cruelty. No one speaks at first. The air carries a hum like the vibration of an invisible spell, an energy that binds them together. Voldemort looks around, his voice breaking through the silence. This is mockery, he hisses. A conjured morality play, but the boy version of himself tilts his head. No, he says softly, this is what's left of you. You can feel the tension ripple through the space. The ghosts don't approach him with vengeance. They simply exist in quiet accusation. Lily steps closer, her presence almost maternal. You sought immortality, she says, her tone neither kind nor cruel. But what you built was a cage. You lived longer than anyone should, and yet you understood nothing. Voldemort's jaw tightens. Love, he spits, is a word for the weak. It made you die. James steps forward now, his voice carrying the steady warmth of someone who knows he's already forgiven more than he should. And yet it's the only thing that survived you, he says. Voldemort turns his gaze on him sharply. You think your sentiment outlasts legacy? James smiles faintly. It did. Ask your mirror. Dumbledore's voice cuts through the tension, low and certain. Tom, do you remember what you told me in my office when you were 16? Voldemort doesn't answer, but his eyes flicker. Dumbledore continues, reciting the memory like an incantation. You asked me if killing split the soul entirely, and whether it could be done repeatedly. You were proud, curious, certain of your own invincibility. I told you the act would leave you less than human. You said that was acceptable. The old man sighs. And now you stand here asking what comes next, wondering why even death feels hollow. The silence that follows is unbearable. You can almost hear the air bending around their words. Nagini slithers closer, her body coiling protectively around the ghost child. Her tongue flickers, tasting the grief in the air. In this realm, she is no longer his familiar, but something freer, her own spirit unbound by his curse. She looks at him with something almost like pity. You made me your vessel, she hisses. You said it was for power, but you never saw how I watched you fade. Voldemort looks away. You would have died without me. Her eyes narrow. And what were you without me? The question lands like a spell with no countercurse. He has no answer. You see it in his posture, the faint sag in his shoulders, the tremor in his hand as he reaches toward his younger self. But the boy takes a step back, clutching the diary to his chest. You used to write to me, the boy says. You called me clever, special. You said the world was broken and you would fix it. His voice shakes. When did you stop believing that? Voldemort stares at him as though seeing a ghost of a ghost. When I learned that the world does not fix, he replies coldly. It submits or it breaks. The boy's expression hardens. Then maybe you broke before it did. A faint rumble passes through the plain, like distant thunder. The sky above flickers with faint streaks of gold. Memories returning to life. You see flashes, Hogwarts in winter, children laughing in the courtyard, a young Tom sitting alone in the library, pretending to study while eavesdropping on students with families who waited for them at Christmas. The emotion he once denied begins to surface. Regret doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It creeps in like warmth, returning to a frozen limb, painful and slow. Dumbledore watches him closely. You were brilliant, Tom, he says softly. But brilliance without compassion is only destruction. I once hoped you would understand that even death is not defeat. But you turned it into an experiment. Voldemort glares. You speak as though I had a choice. You taught me to fear nothing, and then told me to fear death. I told you to respect it, Dumbledore corrects. To see it as part of the same magic that gives life meaning. The child's voice trembles now. Is it true, he asks, that there's nothing beyond this? Dumbledore turns to him gently. There is always something, but we cannot reach it until we stop clinging to what we were. Lily steps forward again. Her eyes soften as she looks at Tom, the adult and the boy at once. You don't have to ask for forgiveness, she says. You only have to understand why you need it. Voldemort frowns, as if the words are a language he once knew but has forgotten. And what happens if I do? He whispers. What becomes of me then? Dumbledore's eyes meet his. That depends on which of you survives, the Lord or the boy. The ground begins to glow faintly beneath them, runes emerging in spirals of gold and silver. You recognize them from ancient magical texts, sigils of remembrance, the oldest form of binding spell used in pre-Hogwarts wizarding rites. They pull memory and identity into harmony, forcing the soul to confront its fractures. Voldemort tries to step back, but it's too late. The light envelops him. He gasps as the world around him fractures into visions. He sees every life he ever took. Cedric falling in the graveyard, Bertha Jorkins pleading for mercy, Snape collapsing beneath his own curse. But mixed with them are stranger images. Harry sparing him, Neville standing tall, Narcissa lying to save her son. Compassion intertwined with cruelty, mercy intertwined with fear. It's overwhelming, like drowning in emotion he has never allowed himself to feel. Nagini's voice cuts through the chaos. Look! He opens his eyes, and through the storm of memory he sees something small but extraordinary, a single tear, his own, falling onto the glowing sigils. It burns like acid, but as it touches the runes, the light softens. The pain shifts into something quieter almost. Peaceful. Lily kneels beside him. Every soul can break, she says, but every soul can also heal. He looks up at her, hollow-eyed. Even mine? Especially yours, she whispers. Scholars still debate whether redemption can exist for one who has willfully divided his soul. Theories from the Department of Mysteries suggest that remorse itself is a form of magic, a reversal of Horcrux making that binds fragments together through suffering rather than splitting through murder. In rare cases, it is said to restore coherence, but only if the remorse is real. The storm fades. The ghosts remain, but their shapes grow fainter, lighter. Dumbledore looks at him one last time. You've seen the past, Tom. What remains is the choice. He gestures toward a faint path forming ahead, a road of light leading into the mist. Walk it, and face what waits at the end. Voldemort glances back at the child version of himself, who has now set down the diary. The boy gives a small nod before dissolving into golden dust that drifts upward like fireflies. Lily and James follow, their faces serene, fading into the horizon. Dumbledore is last to go. You cannot undo what has been done, he says softly, but you can decide what becomes of what's left. The mist clears. Voldemort, no longer the Dark Lord, not yet a man again, stands alone, the sound of the ghosts echoing like distant wind. He takes one step forward, then another, until the plane disappears and the world changes once more. Somewhere beyond the veil, unseen and eternal, the souls he faced linger for a moment longer, watching, waiting, to see whether the boy they once feared will finally learn to be human. You walk with him now through a place that has no walls, no sky, only color. The grey plains of the afterlife dissolve into something vast and shimmering, filled with slow-moving lights like drifting stars underwater. Each one hums faintly, a note of memory, a flicker of feeling. Tom Riddle moves cautiously among them, unsure if what surrounds him is punishment or mercy. He senses it instinctively. This is not the realm of judgment, but of choice. And choice, for someone who once believed in destiny alone, is the cruelest form of freedom. At first there is silence. Then a low vibration fills the space. Not sound exactly, but the resonance of old magic. It feels older than any spell he ever studied, older than Hogwarts itself. This is the kind of power wizards stopped believing in once they discovered wands. The air ripples. From it shapes emerge, tall, translucent, radiant, not with light but with understanding. They wear no faces, only symbols that change as they move. A flame, a drop of water, a serpent biting its own tail. The magic here speaks not in words, but in intention. Tom straightens his back, instinctively defensive. "What are you?" he demands. His voice echoes strangely, half his, half something else. One of the figures steps forward, its form flickering between human and pure energy. When it speaks, the sound is both inside and outside your mind. "We are the keepers of balance," it says, "and you have entered the chamber of remembrance." A faint smile curves on Tom's lips, the old arrogance resurfacing. "A trial, then," he mutters. "How poetic!" But the figure shakes its head. "Not a trial. A reckoning. A chance." The air thickens, heavy with the pulse of ancient enchantment. Beneath your feet, runes spiral outward in slow motion, forming patterns that shift with thought. Each one glows briefly when Tom remembers something. His first spell at Hogwarts, his first act of cruelty, his first kill. The floor is a map of his life, his sins illuminated like constellations. The energy of the chamber hums around him, gentle but merciless. "You tore your soul apart," says the second figure, its voice deep as the ocean. "You believed that power could exist without consequence. But magic is balance. When you divided yourself, you created debt." Tom frowns. "Debt to whom?" "To yourself," the voice replies simply. "And to everything that felt your shadow." He tries to laugh, but it comes out as a dry rasp. You speak of forgiveness as though it were a spell. In a way, it is, says the first figure, but one that cannot be cast, only lived. The lights around him begin to move faster, orbiting him like memories returning to their source. He sees flashes, his mother's face distant and blurred, the orphanage matron's shaking hands, the terrified eyes of a boy he once cursed for calling him strange. Each image strikes like a pulse of lightning, and each leaves him weaker, smaller, more human. You can feel it too, the way the chamber forces him to relive, not as a conqueror, but as the one who was always afraid. And then the voice of the chamber changes. It becomes softer, almost human, almost maternal. Forgiveness, it whispers, is not given to you. It is given by you. The words hang in the air. Tom looks confused, almost angry. I have nothing to forgive. They wronged me first. He stops mid-sentence, his throat tightening. Because even now, the truth slips through his defenses. He has carried anger for so long, he no longer remembers what life was like without it. He takes another step, and suddenly the lights around him stop. Ahead, one glows brighter than the rest, warm, golden, pulsing like a heart. As he reaches toward it, the energy flares, and a scene unfolds in front of him. It's the orphanage again. A little boy sits alone by a cracked window, watching snow fall. He's holding a paper snake he folded himself. Another child, laughing, grabs it and tears it apart. The boy's face twists with rage. You can feel his hurt, a wound that never healed. The figure beside him speaks again, more gently now. This is where forgiveness begins. Tom stares at the child. He deserved it, he says automatically. Did he? The voice asks. Or did you? The question burns deeper than any curse. He watches the boy's small fists clench, the early seeds of cruelty sprouting from a simple humiliation. The image dissolves, and Tom whispers almost to himself, I only wanted to be respected. And yet you chose fear, says the voice. It was all I knew, and it was never enough. A strange quiet follows. The lights dim, leaving only that single golden glow ahead. The chamber vibrates softly as though waiting. You can still choose, the first figure says. But to forgive others, you must first remember who you were before the wound. He looks at his own reflection, shimmering faintly in the glow. The man he sees is not the Dark Lord, not even the student prodigy, but something in between. A man stripped of symbols, titles, and excuses. And if I can't, he asks, then you will remain as you are, the voice replies simply. A ghost bound by your own refusal. He closes his eyes. The silence stretches until it feels eternal. When he speaks again, the voice is smaller, almost childlike. What would forgiveness look like for me? The light flickers, and in response, the scene changes again. He sees himself standing in a field of empty graves. Names shimmer faintly on stone. Victims, enemies, strangers. He kneels, unwillingly at first, then deliberately. He presses his palm to the ground, and something happens that he does not expect. The earth hums beneath his hand, and a warmth rises through him, alien yet familiar. It's not peace, exactly, but recognition, the beginning of release. You can feel the shift too, the subtle realignment of something cosmic. The air grows less heavy, the colors more vivid. For the first time, the ancient energy surrounding him feels almost gentle. The figures fade slightly, their light softening. This is how souls remember themselves, one whispers. Through the act of giving what they were denied. He looks down at his hands again, still spectral, but steadier now. He realizes something impossible. The runes beneath his feet have changed. They no longer burn red with sin. They glow faintly silver, tracing new patterns of wholeness. Each flicker of light corresponds to a choice he once made, now rewritten not with pride, but understanding. Scholars still debate whether such a phenomenon can occur outside legend. Some ancient sources from the Department of Mysteries refer to the atonement spiral, a metaphysical alignment that allows fragments of a divided soul to merge through empathy. It was considered myth, a poetic theory rather than real magic. But standing here, watching Tom Riddle's outline grow clearer, you can almost believe it. The figures speak one last time. "You will forget us," they say. "Forgiveness cannot exist where guilt is worshipped. Remember only this: to be whole is not to be unbroken. It is to know your cracks and still choose light." And then the chamber fades. He stands now in what looks like a forest, though it's hard to tell if it's real or only a memory of one. Moonlight filters through branches that seem to breathe, leaves whispering in languages older than speech. He feels the weight of air on his skin, the sensation of cold, the awareness of being alive somehow. He doesn't know where he is, but he knows what this means. The chamber did not destroy him. It transformed him. For the first time since childhood, Tom Riddle breathes without fear. It is a strange, uncomfortable freedom. He touches his chest instinctively, half expecting to find the emptiness where his soul once fractured. But there is only stillness. The kind of stillness that feels like the beginning of something, not the end. He looks upward, where the moon hangs heavy and imperfect, and speaks softly into the silence. "If forgiveness is a spell," he says, "then maybe I have finally cast one." The forest fades, like a dream half-remembered, and the light bends inward until it becomes a doorway. Beyond it lies something colder, smaller, almost painfully quiet. The hum of divine energy recedes, replaced by the hollow rhythm of rain on window glass. A new world begins to form around the fragment of Tom Riddle's soul, a place he once knew but never loved. The air smells of damp brick, dust, and loneliness. He recognizes it instantly: Wool's Orphanage, London, the place where everything began. He stands in the corridor of his childhood. The walls are pale yellow that time has drained of life. A single light bulb swings overhead, flickering as though uncertain whether it wants to exist. The sound of children whispering echoes faintly from down the hall, followed by the rattle of wind pressing against the old windows. This is not a vision summoned by punishment, but by memory itself, a reconstruction built from the raw material of regret. The chamber has released him here for a reason. The lesson of forgiveness was not complete until he remembered what needed forgiving. He walks forward. The floorboards creak beneath his steps. Each sound carries the weight of a century's silence. Dust floats in the air, glowing in soft currents of light. He passes the matron's office, still neat, still guarded by that familiar odor of ink and disinfectant. Behind the glass, a ledger sits open, the ink frozen mid-word as if the hand that wrote it simply vanished. He sees his name on one of the yellowed pages. Riddle Thomas Marvolo, age 11, placement pending. The handwriting trembles slightly, as though the writer already sensed something wrong. Every corridor feels longer than it should, as if the building stretches with every breath he takes. He moves through the orphanage as both ghost and memory, seeing without being seen. In one of the rooms, two boys play with marbles on the floor. He remembers them. He remembers how easily envy had spread through him, how quickly the small humiliations of childhood became seeds of cruelty. They laugh now, innocent and unaware, but the air around them feels heavy with foreknowledge. The smallest choices of the past always look innocent until you know where they lead. At the end of the hall waits a door he has avoided for years, the dormitory where he used to sleep. He hesitates before entering. The handle feels colder than the air around it. When he opens it, the world seems to exhale. The room is simple: narrow beds, iron frames, a cracked mirror by the wall. But on one of the beds sits a boy with dark hair and sharp eyes, folded knees drawn close to his chest. The boy does not move. He doesn't look up. He is reading something invisible, lips moving without sound. It takes a moment for understanding to sink in. The child is him, the original, unaltered version, the one untouched by magic, by ambition, by Horcruxes. He looks smaller than memory suggests. His hands are delicate, almost fragile, though there's a quiet intensity in the way he holds himself. The sight is unbearable. The man who once called himself Lord Voldemort, terror of nations, heir of Salazar Slytherin, now stands face to face with the echo of the boy he destroyed. He cannot move closer. The space between them feels sacred, like a line drawn by time itself. He knows instinctively that this encounter isn't meant for words. It is not dialogue but realization. He simply watches. The boy turns the page of an imaginary book, eyes flicking up briefly toward the mirror. For a fraction of a second, their gazes meet. It is enough. The air folds in on itself, and images begin to unfold like photographs burning backward in time. The boy at the orphanage, pulling the wings off insects just to see what would happen. The first spark of magic flaring in anger. The quiet triumph of discovering he could make others fear him. These are not moments of cruelty alone. They are moments of desperation, disguised as control. You can feel it now. Every act of power was a shield against invisibility. The orphanage fades and reshapes. The rain outside turns into candlelight. The corridor becomes the marble halls of Hogwarts. You see Tom at 11, 12, 13, walking alone, always apart, brilliant and admired yet never touched by friendship. He learns to charm, to manipulate, to impress. The professors see talent. None see the hunger beneath it. Every compliment becomes proof of superiority, every correction an insult to his pride. And through it all, the fear of being ordinary gnaws at the edges of his mind like a secret illness. The memory shifts again. He's 16 now, standing before the door to the Chamber of Secrets. The serpentine carvings shimmer faintly as he speaks the words that only he can command. The air hisses in response, alive with ancient language. You know what will happen next. The basilisk stirs. The first life will be taken in his name. The echo of innocence dies here, quietly, forever. Time folds in layers, each thinner than the last. You see him as head boy, charming, ambitious, already collecting followers who mistake his confidence for purpose. Then as the young man who walks into Borgin and Burke's, fascinated not by what the shop sells, but by what it whispers. He learns of the soul, of division, of immortality. And in his study, late at night, he begins to write names, objects, heirlooms, relics. The future Horcruxes, the blue ink of destiny, bleeding into black. You realize, as he does now, that the story of his fall was never about power. It was about fear. The boy in the orphanage was terrified of being forgotten, and so he built an empire to make the world remember. But empires built on fear are tombs by another name. Each act of dominance was another attempt to silence the child who whispered, "You are nothing without love." The visions slow. The forest of memory fades into candlelight. He stands alone now, the boy gone, the walls of Hogwarts dissolving around him. The silence is total, but it no longer feels empty. It feels like a pause before understanding. For the first time, the full architecture of his life reveals itself to him, not as glory or tragedy, but as pattern. Everything he did, every cruelty, every spell, every betrayal, it all spiraled outward from that single moment of loneliness in a cold orphanage bed. A faint wind moves through the air, carrying dust motes that shimmer like fragments of soul. They drift around him, drawn toward his chest, merging slowly, gently, without pain. Each one brings with it a sensation, a forgotten warmth, a laugh, a kindness once observed but never felt. Piece by piece, what was broken begins to recognize itself again. The process is not dramatic. It is quiet, human, ordinary. That is what makes it sacred. There are no witnesses, no grand music, no divine proclamation. Only stillness and the steady return of self-awareness. He stands in the soft grey light of his own history, breathing, remembering, regretting, but not despairing. What began as punishment now feels like instruction. Redemption, it seems, is not fire or light or forgiveness from others. It is the long, silent act of meeting your own eyes and not turning away. The walls dissolve completely. The floor becomes mist. The air folds back into that same infinite expanse from before, but it is warmer now, tinged with gold. He looks down and sees that his reflection no longer flickers. The boy is gone, but the feeling remains. The hunger has quieted. The emptiness has found shape. For the first time in eternity, he feels something almost forgotten: curiosity, untainted by ambition. The desire to understand rather than to own. It is fragile but real. He closes his eyes, and the image of the child lingers, small, sharp, and infinitely human. In the deepest part of his being, Tom Riddle no longer runs from that child. He carries him. The air grows heavier again, not with darkness, but with anticipation. The golden warmth of memory fades into something colder and more deliberate. Around Tom Riddle, the mist begins to twist into concentric circles, forming an immense spiral carved into invisible ground. He feels the pull of gravity in a place that should have none. The chamber reforms, not the chamber of secrets this time, but a greater one, older, grander, carved from thought and consequence. Columns of translucent light rise from the void, forming a perfect circle. Upon each stands a figure cloaked in stillness, neither alive nor dead. He knows what this is before anyone speaks. The Council of Balance, the ethereal tribunal of the afterworld, where souls that tamper with creation itself are called to stand before judgment. The myth had been whispered by wizards and seers for centuries, dismissed by most as allegory. But myth, like guilt, always contains a shard of truth. Tom feels it now. In the quiet vibration beneath his feet, the soundless pulse of verdict forming. The trial is not a question of punishment. It is the weighing of essence. He stands at the center of the spiral, barefoot on glass that reflects not his face, but fragments of every version of himself. The boy, the lord, the wanderer, the penitent. Above him, the figures observe, their faces hidden behind veils of mist. There are 12 of them, each bearing an ancient symbol across their chest. Time, memory, mercy, law, fire, water, air, stone, life, death, light, and shadow. They do not move, but their collective awareness presses down like the weight of the world. The first sound that emerges is not a voice, but a vibration, like thunder trapped inside crystal. It speaks not in words, but meaning. You have divided what was meant to remain whole. You have broken the covenant of balance. What remains of you must now be measured. Tom does not respond. He stands still, every instinct telling him to resist, but there is nowhere to flee. The circle glows faintly blue. From the figure marked memory, a light descends. It touches his chest, and in an instant, the world around him fills with scenes from his past, not as visions this time, but as evidence. Each act plays itself out in the open air, projected through the energy that defines this place. The orphanage, the first murder, the transformation into the Dark Lord, the divided soul, the deaths that followed. Every moment burns bright, then fades, leaving an echo of silence that cuts deeper than any curse. Then the second light descends, this one from mercy. It glows gold and softer than the first, wrapping around the remnants of his soul like smoke. The air shifts. The tribunal begins to measure the weight of intention. For every cruelty, there is a memory of fear. For every act of power, an echo of longing. The balance trembles between them. In this place, morality is not measured by action alone, but by the truth hidden inside it. The presence of the tribunal deepens. You can feel it too, the ancient order of it. Something older than the ministry, older even than the first spell uttered by human lips. This is the cosmic arithmetic of consequence, the rhythm by which all things find equilibrium. Scholars still debate whether this plane exists only for the guilty or for all souls. But to witness it here is to understand that even darkness serves the balance, if only by teaching what light must endure. The next figure, marked Law, reaches forward, and a sound emerges like the turning of a great page. The spiral beneath Tom's feet fills with inscriptions in languages no human tongue has spoken for millennia. They list his crimes, not as words of accusation, but as coordinates of imbalance. They are facts of existence, written not to condemn, but to quantify. When the list ends, the symbols fade into ash that scatters upward. The meaning is clear. The record is acknowledged, not erased. Then comes fire. The flame that descends does not burn. It reveals. It flickers through his memories, searing away pretense, showing the truth behind each action. The faces of the dead appear again, some filled with terror, others with defiance. Yet beneath them all lies one unspoken truth, his need to be seen, to be more than the forgotten orphan. Fire exposes it, and for the first time he does not turn away. The serpent of his ambition coils and uncoils, calmer now, no longer striking, but listening. The trial continues in silence. Water brings reflection, showing what might have been if he had chosen differently, a teacher, perhaps, or a guardian of knowledge. Air brings echo, the whispers of those who spoke his name with hatred and those who spoke it with pity. Stone brings permanence, the reminder that legacy once forged cannot be unmade, only reinterpreted by those who follow. Each element passes through him, and with each one, the shape of his being becomes more transparent, less defined by pride, more by recognition. At last, the final three rise: light, shadow, and life. They do not act separately but weave together, forming a triad of energy that circles him like a slow orbit. The chamber brightens, yet the edges grow darker, as though illumination itself has boundaries. In this glow, the serpent appears, a colossal spectral creature made of silver and black smoke, the manifestation of his soul. It coils above him, eyes reflecting infinity. The tribunal remains silent. This is the true trial, not of deeds but of essence. The serpent is him, the part that sought dominion, the instinct that survived when compassion did not. The serpent lowers its head, meeting his gaze. Its eyes shimmer with everything he once was: rage, fear, brilliance, control. For a long moment, they remain motionless, mirrored beings confronting one another across eternity. The creature opens its jaws, and instead of venom, light pours out, filling the air with shapes of memory. His past, his motives, his hunger, all unravel in ribbons of luminous smoke. The serpent pauses, then begins to dissolve, scale by scale, into him. There is no pain, only realization. The serpent was never separate. It was the shape he gave his own survival instinct, the shadow self that kept him alive long enough to destroy everything else. As it merges back into him, he feels no triumph, only completion. The energy of the chamber steadies. The figures of the tribunal lower their hands. The spiral stops turning. Above, the figure-marked life extends one final thread of light toward him. It touches the space just above his heart, and for a moment he feels warmth, not external but internal, the pulse of wholeness rediscovered. No verdict is spoken. None is needed. The balance has been restored, not by decree, but by understanding. The lights begin to fade, one by one. The tribunal dissolves into mist, leaving behind only faint motes of silver dust. The spiral beneath him softens, until it is nothing but air again. He stands alone in the void, but the void no longer feels hostile. The silence around him carries rhythm, the same pulse he felt in the chamber of forgiveness, the pulse of something still alive. He looks down at his reflection, faintly visible in the glass below. The face that stares back is neither monstrous nor young. It is calm, aged, and human. The eyes are no longer red, but the pale gray of someone who has seen everything and still chooses to remain. There are no flames, no applause, no divine light from above. Only stillness. In the mortal world, they say souls like his vanish into oblivion. But perhaps oblivion is simply what peace looks like from the outside. In truth, he is not gone, only balanced. The serpent within him sleeps, and the boy it once protected finally stands without fear. Far beyond, somewhere in the waking world, a soft wind passes through the forbidden forest. The trees sway gently, though no one sees it. Somewhere in that whisper of air, a faint echo remains, neither curse nor blessing, just a sigh. And within that sigh there lingers the trace of understanding, that even those who fall furthest from grace can, in time, become whole enough to be silent. The void around him begins to shift again, but this time there is no tremor, no celestial hum, no tribunal watching from afar. The transformation comes quietly, like dawn slipping unnoticed across the horizon. The darkness softens, revealing a muted world made of light and shadow, half-formed, half-remembered. The soul of Tom Riddle stands upon a surface that reflects the sky itself, though there is no sun, no stars, only a soft radiance that seems to breathe. It is not heaven, nor is it punishment. It is possibility. He looks around, unsure if he's still in the afterlife or caught inside a memory too vast to name. The ground ripples beneath him like water, each step spreading gentle rings of gold that fade into infinity. He feels weight for the first time in what might be centuries, a faint reminder of what it once meant to exist inside a body, to be bound to time. There is peace in that heaviness, and something else too, quiet awe. Before him rises a faint glow, at first like mist, then forming into something recognizable. A hill beneath a pale morning sky. He knows this place, Hogwarts, but it's not the castle he remembers. The towers are translucent, their edges blurred by light. The lake glimmers in stillness, and the forbidden forest hums like a living dream. Every detail is too perfect to belong to reality, yet too imperfect to be illusion. It feels like a memory the world itself has chosen to keep. He walks toward the grounds, hearing the faint echo of laughter carried on a wind that doesn't exist. Children's voices, students moving through their day, unseen but present in energy. The castle breathes. The very stones seem alive with the echoes of thousands of footsteps, of generations who came here to learn, to love, to live. He once saw Hogwarts as a fortress to conquer, a place that existed to reflect his greatness. Now for the first time, he sees it as what it truly was, a sanctuary for light. The air ripples. Images form in flashes, not ghosts, not illusions, but fragments of life preserved in memory. A young witch bends over a cauldron, smiling as the mixture glows the wrong color. Two boys chase a golden snitch across the lawn. A group of first years huddle around their first spell, nervous laughter echoing down the hall. It's all so ordinary, so tender that it hurts. These small lives, the ones he had dismissed as insignificant, are what endure. The world continues, indifferent to his greatness, yet somehow carrying the weight of his absence with grace. He stands beneath the great oak by the lake. The wind moves softly through invisible leaves, carrying warmth rather than cold. Something in him loosens, the last remnant of resistance, the final thread of pride. He remembers the night he murdered his first victim, how he believed in that moment that power was light, that to dominate was to illuminate. But here, surrounded by the memory of laughter and learning, he understands the truth he spent a lifetime avoiding. The light was never his to command. It was never about spells, wands, or bloodlines. It was something ordinary, human, shared. The realization comes not as pain, but as silence. It sinks deep into the core of him, soft but irrevocable. In this quiet revelation, he begins to see his own myth unraveling. Every act of cruelty, every speech of dominance, every fear he inspired, all of it was an attempt to imitate what he could never create. He wanted light, but only knew how to burn. A faint shimmer crosses the water. The surface begins to ripple, forming patterns of silver that gather into the shape of a figure. The form is indistinct, glowing softly, faceless yet familiar. It radiates calm. This is not one of his victims, nor a judge. It is something simpler, an echo of the living world, the collective memory of those who still speak his name, not with hatred, but with reflection. Every student who ever read about the war, every parent who warned their child about the danger of power without love, every whisper in the corridors about the boy who could have been great. This light is the world remembering him not as a monster, but as a lesson. It approaches without sound, leaving ripples of warmth in its wake. He does not retreat. The time for fear is long past. As the figure stops before him, the light brightens, revealing no face, no eyes, just an outline filled with a gentle pulse. It raises one hand and touches his chest, not as a blessing, not as a command, but as acknowledgement. The touch is weightless, yet it floods through him like warmth spreading through stone. He understands now. The light is what he could never destroy because it was never his to possess. Every act of violence, every curse, every attempt to reshape the world in his image, it all failed because the world was never meant to belong to one will. Light exists because it is shared. It belongs to the small, the forgotten, the kind. It belongs to Lily's final breath, to Dumbledore's quiet faith, to the laughter of nameless students in the courtyard. It belongs even to the child he once was, the one who wanted to be seen. The warmth deepens, spreading outward. His surroundings begin to dissolve, not into darkness this time, but into color, gentle blues, soft golds, the hue of sunrise. The translucent castle fades, the hill melts into mist, and the lake becomes a field of shimmering air. He is no longer bound to the image of place. He is being unmade, but not erased. As the transformation unfolds, something curious happens. He feels his consciousness stretching outward. The boundaries between self and world blur. He senses everything, the air, the warmth, the pulse of unseen life beyond this place. There is no fear, no pain, no regret, only understanding. He realizes that redemption was never about undoing the past, but accepting its weight without letting it define what comes next. The light expands, surrounding him completely. He feels himself dissolve into it, not as punishment, but as completion. The edges of thought become fluid, blending into the rhythm of creation itself. Somewhere far below, in the mortal world, the first light of morning touches the stones of the great hall. The world moves on, untouched and eternal. In that quiet moment before the final merging, there is one lingering awareness, a single idea that floats like dust in sunlight. The realization that immortality was always misunderstood. It was never about the body or the soul. It was memory. The way the world remembers what you were, what you taught it, even through your mistakes. And so, in that sense, Tom Riddle achieves the thing he sought all along. He endures, not as a tyrant, not as a god, but as a story. He feels no triumph in it, only peace. The serpent's echo rests within him like coiled light, not menacing, not proud, just quiet. The eternal battle between darkness and illumination has reached its balance. He understands now that every shadow exists only because there is something to block the light. The glow consumes him entirely, until nothing remains but the faintest shimmer in the air. It lingers for a breath, then fades. What is left behind is not emptiness, but serenity. A world untouched, a sky that remembers, and a whisper that says softly into the silence, even darkness must learn how to rest. The light recedes slowly, not vanishing, but thinning into a quiet afterglow that hums at the edge of existence. The storm of memory, judgment, and revelation has passed. What remains is stillness, pure, almost tender. Tom Riddle's essence drifts through a silence too vast for sound, too gentle for fear. The chaos that once defined him, the hunger, the ambition, the relentless pulse of conquest, has gone. What fills him now is something he never once allowed himself to feel. Quiet. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of calm. He moves, or perhaps simply is, within this infinite stillness. The boundaries of form have dissolved completely. There are no limbs to command, no voice to command them with, no mirror to reflect what he has become. Only awareness, suspended in the cradle of eternity. The light that once consumed him now lingers faintly around his being, a soft pulse that beats in rhythm with the universe. For the first time, Tom Riddle does not try to command it. He simply listens. Through that listening, he begins to notice faint threads weaving through the silence, memories not of himself, but of others. Fragments of laughter, the echo of a train whistle, the hum of a classroom. He senses the warmth of human life, as if through a window he can no longer open. Hogwarts endures. The world he once tried to control goes on, quietly, beautifully indifferent. And yet, in some small way, he feels part of it, not as ruler but as residue. A trace of story, woven into the collective memory of a world that survived him. Scholars still debate what becomes of a divided soul after death. Some believe the fragments drift endlessly until they fade, their energy absorbed into creation itself. Others insist that they reform, not as one being, but as particles of compassion scattered like dust into the hearts of those still living. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps every act of darkness that learns to surrender becomes, in time, a flicker of understanding somewhere in the world. The idea comforts him, though he can no longer cling to ideas at all. Thought itself is dissolving into rhythm. Far away, though distance means nothing here, the faint outline of the world shimmers into view. The living go on. You can almost see it as he does. The castle lit by morning lamps, owls returning to the towers, the faint echo of footsteps in the great hall. Life has resumed its soft, perpetual motion. In the library, a young student opens an old book about the Second Wizarding War. The words are careful, almost reverent. Tom Riddle, once a prodigy, became Lord Voldemort, the darkest wizard of his age. She frowns, tracing the sentence with her fingertip, whispering to herself, "Why would anyone want to live forever?" Then she turns the page and the world continues. Tom feels it all, faintly, as vibration. The living no longer fear him. They study him. His shadow has become lesson. There is a strange grace in that transformation, the alchemy of horror into caution, tragedy into wisdom. For centuries he sought immortality through domination, only to find it now in humility. This perhaps is the truest kind of redemption, to be remembered not as terror, but as proof of what must never be repeated. The silence deepens, but it is no longer void. It feels like rest. The pulse of the universe slows until it matches the rhythm of his own fading awareness. He begins to sense movement again, not outward, but inward. His essence folding gently into itself like water returning to the ocean. The weight of identity loosens. Even the name Tom Riddle begins to drift apart, its syllables scattering like dust through eternity. He is no longer the boy, the lord, the myth, or the monster. He is something smaller, purer, a particle of balance in the vast machinery of being. Time, if such a thing exists here, stretches. Light grows softer, shadows fainter. His awareness dims, but not in fear. There is a beauty in this ending. For the first time in eternity, there is nothing left to fight against. He begins to wonder if this is what peace feels like. The quiet acceptance that the story is over, and that being forgotten is not the same as being lost. To vanish into the rhythm of creation is not punishment. It is the return home. In the distance a faint glow begins to form. It is not judgment, not heaven, not the light of salvation promised by myth. It is simpler, the heartbeat of existence itself. The pulse that binds all living and unliving things. The same energy that sparked his magic long ago in the orphanage window. The same current that flows through every wand, every whispered spell, every act of wonder and kindness that defines the human world. He moves toward it, not with purpose, but with ease. The glow embraces him. Within it are voices, not speaking words, but expressing feeling. They sound like the rush of wind through leaves, the crash of ocean waves, the sigh of a candle burning out. Each carries something he once denied himself. Love, friendship, joy, grief. He does not deserve them, yet they welcome him anyway, folding him into the rhythm of all things. The last thought that passes through what remains of him is not pride, nor fear, nor even regret. It is gratitude, wordless, simple, complete, and then, for the first time since he was a child, there is sleep. Not the restless half-death of Horcrux immortality, but real sleep, the kind that carries no dreams, no pain, no ambition, the kind that means surrender. As he dissolves into the great weave of existence, the light fades completely. The universe breathes. Somewhere far away, in the world of the living, dawn spreads across the lake at Hogwarts. A golden reflection ripples on the water. No one sees it for what it is, the faint echo of a soul that finally let go. The story of Tom Riddle ends here, not with thunder or flame, but with a sigh so soft it becomes indistinguishable from the wind. There is no monument, no relic, no song. Only the quiet truth that even the darkest soul, once emptied of its noise, leaves behind a single shimmer of understanding. That peace does not come from victory, but from release, and so the world continues to turn. The light remains. The children still laugh in the corridors of Hogwarts. The birds return to their towers. And in the folds of eternity, where time loses meaning, what was once called Voldemort becomes nothing more and nothing less than a whisper of balance in the silence that holds all things. The wind softens. The light dims. The story fades. The world outside is calm now. The echoes of the story settle into the stillness of night. You can almost hear the faint hum of your own breath blending with the rhythm of the tale, steady, slow, and peaceful. The journey has carried you from the depths of darkness through memory, trial, and quiet redemption. And now there is nothing left to uncover. Only rest. Let the images fade from your mind, the flicker of candlelight, the echo of footsteps in the corridors, the shimmer of the lake at dawn. Let them dissolve into the calm that fills the space around you. This is the quiet end of evil, not a punishment, but a return to stillness, to understanding, to peace. As the last threads of the story drift away, allow yourself to drift with them. Feel the air around you grow lighter, softer. Breathe in once, deeply, then let it go. The tale has ended, and with it every struggle, every sound. Only quiet remains. You have walked through the end of darkness, and now, like him, you stand within the stillness that follows. There is nothing left to fear here, only sleep and the simple mercy of silence.